My girlfriend announced she was moving in with Ethan and told me not to reach out again. I shut down the credit cards I'd been covering. When her payment was declined right in front of him, she completely fell apart. At 29, Mel walked into an apartment that felt entirely too quiet. It was a kind of heavy, echoing quiet that instantly tells your brain something is fundamentally wrong before your eyes can even process the details. I had just returned from a grueling 4-day tech conference in Seattle, dragging my suitcase through the door and fully expecting to find my ex-girlfriend lounging on the couch, half watching her usual reality shows. Instead, I stepped into a living room that looked like it had been systematically looted. The expensive espresso machine I bought her for Christmas was gone. The vintage designer rugs we had picked out together were rolled up and missing. Even the custom orthopedic dog bed I had bought for my golden retriever was nowhere to be seen. Thankfully, my dog was safe and sound at a local boarding kennel I always use when I travel for work. I dropped my suitcase right there in the entryway. My heart started doing that uncomfortable, heavy pounding against my ribs, but I didn't panic yet. I thought maybe there had been a break-in. Then I saw the kitchen island. Sitting perfectly centered on the pristine quartz countertop was a single, neatly folded sheet of heavy cardstock paper. I walked over and picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, with those dramatic, sweeping loops she always used. But the words themselves were brief, clinical, and completely devoid of any human emotion. She announced she was moving in with her new boyfriend, a guy I didn't even know existed. She specifically wrote, and I quote, "Do not reach out to me again. I need space to find my true self, elevate my journey, and close this chapter of my life forever. Respect my boundaries." There was no apology for betrayal. There was no explanation of who this guy was or how long it had been going on. Just a cold, entitled directive to pretend a 3-year relationship had never happened, written by a woman who had just cleared out half my high-end appliances. I stood there in the empty living room for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw anything against the wall. Instead, a very cold, incredibly sharp clarity washed over me. The kind of clarity that strips away all your affection for a person and replaces it with pure, unadulterated logic. I walked straight into my home office, sat down at my desk, and booted up my computer to log into my bank accounts. You see, for the last 18 months, my ex-girlfriend had been intensely focused on finding herself professionally. She had dramatically quit her corporate marketing job, claiming the environment was toxic and stifling her creative energy. She decided she was going to launch a boutique freelance consulting business. During that entire 18-month period, she didn't bring in a single dime of profit. I paid the rent for our luxury apartment. I paid the utility bills. I paid for the organic groceries she insisted on. And most crucially, I had added her as an authorized user on my 2 premium credit cards so she could cover her day-to-day expenses, networking lunches, and business startup costs without having to ask me for cash every single time she left the house. I had trusted her completely. I opened the recent transactions tab for my primary credit card. My blood went absolute ice. Over the 4 days I was in Seattle, working 14-hour days at this conference, she had gone on an absolute rampage. She had charged nearly $8,000 to my accounts. There were massive charges for a premium white glove moving company. There were charges for luxury Egyptian cotton bed linens. A $2,500 charge at a high-end electronics store for what looked like a massive smart TV and a sound system. She was literally outfitting the brand new apartment she was moving into with her new boyfriend on my dime. She was using my hard-earned money to build a cozy little love nest for another man. She wanted me to close the chapter. She told me to respect her boundaries and not reach out. I decided right then and there to respect her wishes with absolute malicious compliance. I picked up my phone and called my credit card companies. I didn't just casually freeze the cards through the app. I got a live fraud prevention representative on the phone. I reported her specific authorized user cards as compromised and permanently revoked her authorization. I spent an hour on the phone with 2 different banks, having the representatives flag her specific name and date of birth on the accounts, so she couldn't try to call in crying later and socially engineer her way back into access. I made absolutely sure that the heavy metal credit cards currently sitting in her designer purse were completely dead pieces of plastic. I didn't text her to warn her. I didn't call her to yell about the cheating or the money. I just made myself a strong drink, sat on the one remaining armchair in my living room, and waited. I knew her habits. I knew her expensive tastes. And I knew exactly how long it would take for reality to hit her like a freight train. The absolute silence from her end lasted exactly 48 hours. It was a Friday night, right around 8:30 p.m. I was sitting at my kitchen island eating takeout when my phone started vibrating violently against the counter. The caller ID flashed my ex-girlfriend's number. I just watched it buzz. I let it ring out. It stopped, paused for maybe 3 seconds, and then immediately started ringing again. She called 6 times in a row, back to back. Then came the barrage of text messages, lighting up my lock screen one after another. Why is my car declining? Answer the phone right now. This is important. Are you seriously doing this? This isn't funny. Turn the cards back on immediately. You are being incredibly immature. Pick up the phone. I took a slow bite of my food and watched the text roll in, feeling absolutely nothing but a deep, satisfying sense of vindication. Finally, she stopped texting and left a voicemail. I tapped it and put it on speakerphone. The background noise was unmistakable. You could hear the clinking of heavy silver cutlery against expensive porcelain, the soft jazz playing over invisible speakers, and the low murmur of a crowded, upscale dining room. She was whispering fiercely into the receiver, but her voice was shaking with barely contained panic and rage. You need to fix this right now, she hissed into the phone, her breath catching. I am at dinner with new boyfriend at that steakhouse downtown. The waiter just brought the card back to the table right in front of him and said it was declined. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? He thinks I have my own money. He thinks I'm a successful consultant. You owe me a transition period to get on my feet. Turn the account back on right now, or I swear I will make your life a living nightmare. I didn't respond. I just deleted the voicemail and went back to my dinner. Exactly 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was a local but unknown number. I wiped my hands on a napkin and answered it. Hello, I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat. Is this the ex? A male voice asked. He sounded tight, uncomfortable, and incredibly stressed. I instantly knew it was new boyfriend. Depends entirely on who's asking. I replied smoothly. Look, man, my girlfriend's cards are all getting declined. She's currently locked in the restaurant bathroom crying hysterically. She says there's some kind of fraud alert on her joint accounts with you. We have a $600 dinner bill sitting on the table here, and the manager is hovering. Can you just be a decent guy and clear the fraud alert so we can pay and leave? I took a slow, deep breath, savoring the moment. I don't have any joint accounts with her. She was an authorized user on my personal credit cards. She moved out of my apartment 2 days ago while I was out of town, left a handwritten note telling me never to contact her again, and took thousands of dollars worth of my property. So I closed her access. There is no fraud alert. Her cards are canceled. She has absolutely no money. There was dead silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of the restaurant chatter in the background, but the guy himself wasn't breathing. Wait, new boyfriend finally said, his voice dropping an octave, completely losing that irritated edge. She told me she was a senior partner in a tech firm. She told me she bought all that brand new furniture for our place herself with her bonus. She bought it with my American Express. I said, simply, while I was at a conference. She doesn't have a job. Man, she hasn't worked in a year and a half. Have a good night. Enjoy the check. I hung up and blocked the number. I could only imagine the absolute catastrophic scene that unfolded at that steakhouse. Her payment declining right in front of this new guy she was trying to impress, exposing her entirely fabricated lifestyle in one swoop. She completely fell apart, stripped of the financial armor she had stolen from me. But I quickly learned that her entitlement was practically a superpower. She genuinely believed the world owed her whatever she wanted, and she was not done fighting dirty. The next morning, I woke up to a loud, authoritative banging on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and sighed. It was 2 uniformed police officers. I unlocked the door and greeted them calmly. The The officers had stern expressions and informed me that my ex-girlfriend had filed an official police report claiming I had stolen her vehicle and was illegally holding her personal property hostage out of spite. Officers, the car is registered entirely in my name, I explained, pulling out my phone and opening my insurance app alongside the digital title from the DMV. I bought it 2 years ago. I let her drive it because she didn't have a vehicle, but I pay the loan and I pay the insurance. She abandoned this apartment 3 days ago to move in with another man. I walked over to the counter, grabbed her handwritten note, and handed it to the lead officer. The officer read the note, looked at my digital car title, and his posture instantly relaxed. He let out a long, tired sigh. They instantly recognized a messy civil dispute masking as a false police report. She told dispatch she has a set of keys and that it's her primary mode of transportation, the second officer noted, looking annoyed at having his time wasted. She has a key fob, yes, I said, but it's my property. Well, it's a civil matter, the lead officer said, handing the note back. We can't force you to give her the car, but since she has the keys, if she comes and gets it, we can't arrest her either. You guys need to sort this out in court. They apologized for the disturbance and left. I locked the door behind them and immediately got to work. If she thought she was keeping my $35,000 SUV, she was out of her mind. I called the dealership and had them remotely deactivate her specific key fob from the car's computer system. Then I called a private, highly rated towing company. I emailed them the title proving my ownership, a copy of my driver's license, an exact address she had accidentally revealed to me when she ordered the moving company on my credit card. I paid the towing company a premium emergency fee. They drove over to new boyfriend's apartment complex and legally repossessed my own car right out of his visitor parking spot before noon. Losing the car was apparently the final straw that pushed her completely over the edge. She realized I wasn't just cutting her off. I was systematically dismantling the fake life she had built. She had no money, no car, and new boyfriend was suddenly asking a lot of very uncomfortable questions about her finances. By Tuesday, she resorted to the absolute dirtiest trick in the legal book. I was sitting in my office working when a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door and handed me a stack of papers. I had been served with an emergency ex parte protective order. She had gone down to a magistrate and sworn under oath that I had threatened her with severe physical violence. She claimed she was terrified for her life but needed immediate, exclusive access to my apartment for 48 hours to safely retrieve her remaining vital business belongings. Under the law in my state, a temporary order can be granted by a judge based solely on petitioner's sworn testimony without the accused being present. The catch is, once you are served, you have to vacate your residence immediately until a formal hearing can take place, usually within a week. She literally weaponized the domestic violence system just to force me out of my own home, so she could come in and strip it bare of whatever valuables she left behind the first time. I didn't break the law. I packed a small duffel bag, locked my apartment, went to a nearby hotel, and immediately called the most ruthless civil litigation attorney I could find in the city. My lawyer was furious when he saw the paperwork. We spent the entire night preparing. We filed an emergency motion to quash the order the very next morning at the courthouse. We attached the security camera footage from my apartment lobby showing her calmly, happily directing the movers while I was in Seattle, completely unbothered and clearly not in fear for her life. We attached her handwritten, "Do not contact me" note, and we attached the credit card statements showing she was busy buying luxury bed sheets on my dime during the exact time frame she claimed I was terrorizing her. The judge scheduled an expedited hearing for Thursday morning. I sat quietly at the defense table in the courtroom. She walked in looking like she had rehearsed for a movie role. She wore no makeup. Her hair was deliberately messy, and she was swallowed up in an oversized, drab sweater. She was playing the victim to perfection. I noticed immediately that new boyfriend was not with her. Apparently, having to pay that $600 dinner tab and realizing his new living girlfriend was an unemployed fraud with no car had put a severe, terminal strain on their budding romance. When the judge asked her to explain why she needed this emergency protective order, she started crying right on cue. She told a wild story about how I was financially abusing her by cutting off our credit cards, stealing her car, and trying to ruin her business. My attorney stood up. He didn't yell. He didn't even sound angry. He was completely surgical. He handed the judge the vehicle title proving sole ownership. He handed the judge my sole ownership lease agreement for the apartment. He provided the bank statements showing she was merely an authorized user. And finally, he handed the judge the itemized list of the $8,000 in luxury furniture charges she made after deciding to leave me. Your Honor, my attorney said calmly, the petitioner is attempting to manipulate and weaponize the domestic violence statute to facilitate a property theft. She is upset that my client closed his personal credit cards after she abandoned the relationship to move in with another man. She perjured herself to get my client removed from his home so she could steal his remaining property. The judge, an older gentleman with a very stern face, carefully reviewed the documents. He looked at the lobby camera stills. He read her handwritten note. Then he looked down at her from the bench, his expression hardening into pure disdain. Ma'am, the judge said, his voice echoing in the quiet courtroom, authorized user status on a credit card is a privilege, not a legal right. You cannot compel someone to fund your lifestyle after you leave them. Furthermore, filing a false affidavit for a protective order is perjury. It is a crime. You are making a mockery of this court and of actual victims. The judge dismissed the protective order immediately, ordered that my apartment access be fully restored, and issued her a severe, on-the-record warning about abusing the judicial system. She looked absolutely shell-shocked. She had played her ultimate trump card, fully expecting the system to coddle her and force me to submit, and instead, she got publicly destroyed. But I wasn't finished. As she walked out of the courtroom, looking completely defeated and staring at the floor, my attorney stepped into her path and handed her a thick manila envelope. What is this? She snapped, clutching it to her chest. You've been served, my attorney said cheerfully. I had filed a civil lawsuit against her in the county court for exactly $8,000, the amount of the unauthorized charges she made between the time she wrote that breakup note and the time I canceled the cards. Because she had documented her departure in writing with that note, any spending on my cards to furnish her new apartment was legally considered unjust enrichment and conversion of funds. The civil lawsuit took exactly 62 days to get a court date. During those 2 months, her carefully constructed fake life completely unraveled. Through the grapevine of mutual friends, the whole story trickled back to me. New boyfriend, realizing he was suddenly financially responsible for a woman who was actively being sued, had zero income, and brought a mountain of drama to his doorstep, officially kicked her out. As for the fancy $8,000 worth of furniture she bought with my money, he kept it all, claiming she owed him for her half of the broken lease and all the bills he had been covering since she moved in. She was forced to pack whatever fit into a friend's car and move back into her parents' damp basement in a neighboring state. When the court date for the civil suit finally arrived, she showed up looking entirely different from the arrogant, entitled woman who had left that note on my kitchen counter. She looked exhausted, pale, and thoroughly beaten down by reality. She couldn't afford a lawyer, so she represented herself. When she took the stand, she tried to argue to the judge that we had a verbal contract. She claimed I had promised to support her while she built her business, and that my closing the credit cards was a breach of that unwritten contract. She actually tried to tell the judge that the $8,000 in furniture was a parting gift she was entitled to for the years she spent with me. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with absolutely zero patience for entitlement, stopped her mid-sentence. Do you have the supposed support contract in writing? The judge asked sharply. No, Your Honor, but we lived together for her. Did you write this note? The judge held up a laminated copy of her "Do not reach out to me" letter. Yes, but you have to understand the context. The context is extremely clear, the judge stated flatly, cutting her off again. You unilaterally terminated the relationship. You demanded zero contact. You cannot terminate a relationship, demand the plaintiff leave you alone, and then expect him to continue acting as your personal, unlimited ATM. Once you drafted this note, your authorization to use his funds ceased immediately. Your spending was unauthorized. Judgment is for the plaintiff in the full amount of $8,000, plus all court costs and legal fees. She physically slumped in her chair. The gavel banged loudly. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. For the first time in months, I felt completely light. The weight of her constant demands, her lies, and her profound sense of entitlement was entirely gone. I didn't feel the need to gloat to her face. I didn't need to scream or call her names. The revenge wasn't in being cruel. The revenge was simply applying a harsh, unyielding reality of the real world to her staggering entitlement. She wanted so desperately to be a strong, independent woman finding her true self. I just helped facilitate that independence by entirely removing my safety net. Now, she has a massive civil court judgment sitting on her public record, a completely ruined credit score, no car, no boyfriend, and she's back living in her childhood bedroom trying to figure out how to pay me back. I got my peaceful apartment back to myself. My dog is happily lounging on his new bed, and my finances are entirely my own again.